The links to the Nishmas Etta Ahuva by Yaakov Masach Erchin Perek Beis Mishna Gimel, continuing the Perek with other cases where it says Ein Pirchsim V'Leim Meisifin. So Ein Pirchsim Esim V'Achas Tkiyas B'Migdash. In the Migdash, every day there were 21 Tkiyas. Really, 7 times they did it through a Tkiya through a Tkiya, which the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we would have counted that as 1. He holds Tkiya through a Tkiya as 1. The Tan of our Mishnah, the Rabbanan that held Tkiya through a Tkiya is 3. So there were, altogether, there were 7 times. 1 by the Sichas HaSha'arim when they opened up the gate, and then there were 3 by the Tamid Shel Shachar and 3 by the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, each one being a Tkiya is 21 each day. V'loi Meisifin al Arbaim V'shmoina, there weren't more than 48, and the Gemara in Sukkah Daf Nun Gimel says that that's referring to Erev Shabbos during Sukkot, where over there were an additional 4 for the Nisach HaMayim, each through a Tkiya, so it's 12. And there were additional 3 for the Musafim, which is another 9. And then there were 2 for Erev Shabbos, 3 to be Mivata from Malacha, and 3 to be Mabdel Bein Kodesh L'Chol. Altogether is 48. The Gemara over there says that on Erev Pesach, Shechal Yos B'Shabbos, there were actually even more, but it's not Shchiach, so we don't count it. The Mishnah continues, Ein Pirchsim Meishnei Nevalim, V'loi Meisifin al Shisha. There were 2 Leviim playing this instrument, the Naval, B'Shas, the Shira of each day. V'loi Meisifin al Shisha, and there weren't more than 6 Leviim playing. Rashi says, Lo Yisparish Taima. What the reason is that the maximum was 6. Teves Yisrael says that less than 2 and more than 6 wouldn't be as nice. That's what Chazal were mishar. The Mishnah continues, in Pirchsim me Shnei Chalilin. There were 2 Leviim playing the Chalil, which is a flute. V'loi Meisifin, we'll see soon. V'loi Meisifin al Shnei Masar, and there were not more than 12. Why 12? Because of B'Shnei Masar Yom B'Shana Chalil Maka Lefnei HaMizbeach, because 12 times a year they play this flute. Maka, Rashi says, because when you play the flute, you hit the holes, and that's what makes the voice come out, the sound come out. So Rashi speaks out, since it was done 12 times a year, so connected that, every time they sung it, they could have 12 people playing the Chalil. What were the 12 times a year? B'shchitas ha-Pesach Rishon, b'shchitas Pesach Sheni, b'shas de'shechta the carbon Pesach, so that's 2. B'yom Tov Rishon shel Pesach, b'yom Tov shel Atzeres, first day of Pesach, first day of Atzeres, that's 4 altogether. And plus an additional 8, b'shmoni mechag, each day of Sukkot. The Gemara says, Mishna, what's pshat these 12 days? Hoyel v'yochid gomer behen es halal. These are the days that you say a full halal, and the Gemara goes through, there's a famous Gemara, if you want to reference ever why these are the days that you say full halal and not other days. And the Mishnah continues about the flute. They didn't use a flute made out of copper. And here the Gemara uses the word avuv for flute. The Mishnah uses, and the Gemara says, why? Pasach b'chalil, Masayim ba'aviv. So the Gemara says, or Papa says it's the same thing, but we call it a chalil, the chali kali, because its voice is sweet. It wasn't a copper one. El b'aviv shel kanam neisha kailar. You used the one made out of reeds. You end it off with one Levi playing the flute, because when you end off with one, that's how it sounds the nicest. The Mishnah Daled, Avdei Koyanim Hayu Divrei Rameir, the people that played it had to be Koyanim, according to Rameir. Rabbi Yosef min Mishpachas Beis Hapkar and Beis Separio Me'umam Hayu Masin Lakuna. They could be Yisraelim, but they had to be Miyucheses. And Chananya ben Antignas Eimer Leviim Hayu. They had to be Leviim. So the Gemara says the 3 Machlokes is totally in. Their mayor held Ein Mailin Min Haduchin. Just because someone is playing, we're not going to assume that he's not Miyuches and not that he's a Levi, that not to give him Maisis. Rabbi Yosi held that if you see him playing, we're going to assume that he's Miyuches, so that's why you have to use Yisrael Michasim. And Chanina ben Atugnas held that if you see him playing, we're going to assume that he's a Levi, because he held Mailam and Aduchin the Maisis, and therefore they had to be Leviim.